Hey guys, it's Linux Next here. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the Wayland driver, as 1.10 did come out, I think it was like a month or two ago at some point, and they did actually finish the Wayland driver, the initial version of the Wayland driver in 1.10. So you can actually try it out if you disable a environment variable in Wine. So we're going to be talking about in this today's video. We're going to be looking at, what is the Wayland driver, comparison between the Wayland versus the XWAYLAND driver, just showing the differences, if there's actually any difference in performance, and things like, why does it matter if we have a Wayland driver? Is it really going to improve anything? And the issues that I have experiencing when I've been using the Wayland driver on Wine 10. So, well, why does Wayland even really matter? Well, the goal with Wayland is to try and be a replacement to X11. It's trying to replace it. It's trying to get rid of X11. It's literally just trying to be not necessarily better, even though it does have lots of advantages over X11. It's just trying to get rid of everything that's got to do with X11, because X11 does have limitations. The developers have moved over to Wayland, and so this advancement in Wayland, everything needs to try and support Wayland, so we don't have to go through this translation hell. I'll show up a screenshot. Usually when you run a Wayland application, it just goes straight from the application to the compositor in a simple term. But with X11, it needs to be translated through a thing called XWAYLAND. And this is installed on basically every single Linux, major Linux distro, like Fedora, Arch, Ubuntu, etc. And it needs to be translated from X11. So you have an application that's running as X11, and Wayland will translate it to a Wayland application, basically. It will try to do that. It'll try and replicate it in some way. And that can cause many issues. Now, XWayland has gotten really good, but we're all just trying to get to a certain point where everything is just perfect, and we can just use Wayland and just focus on improving Wayland as a whole. So as you can see, Wine 10 did release, and it did include the initial Wayland driver. And if we do have a read through here, if I can find it, as you can see here, the Wayland driver, the Wayland graphics driver is enabled by default, but the X11 driver still takes precedence if both are available. To force using the Wayland driver in that case, make sure that the display environment variable is unset. So what they're saying is, environment variables, on Steam, for example, with a launch command, usually you do to get a Proton log, you do all in caps Proton underscore log equals 1, I'm pretty sure. So then the Proton logging is enabled, and then you do a %command%. Well, you do the similar thing with this. So you do display equals 0, so that it's unset, and that would force Wayland to be used in that Wine runner that you're trying to use. So for example, if you wanted to use it in Lutris, you would need Wine 10 or higher to actually, use the Wayland driver properly, because before that, it wasn't ready, I would say. Wine 10 seems to be a good base to start off with before there's newer versions where it actually gets better. But if you want to use it, you definitely need a Wine 10 version. What I did is I went to PROTONPLUS. It's a GUI application. I just selected Lutris, either be Flatpak or System, and I just grabbed the Wine Staging TKG version, which is 10.0 right here. Now you can also, if Wine is provided in your repo, you can also just get it from there. But of course, when you are running this, if you're trying to play games, it may have lower performance because it's missing a lot of Proton patches, and I'm pretty sure there's no synchronization used by default with the regular Wine 10 runner, so you may see worse performance in some games. Like I saw in Death Stranding, I saw a 50 FPS drop when running Wine versus Wine GE, which has patches for different games. So after you've installed Wine 10, you can configure on a game, let's say Death Stranding, for example, and we can go to the runner options here. We want to, of course, use Wine 10 or above. And then we want to go to system options, scroll all the way down to the environment variables, and we want to do the key, which is display, as it said in the wine10 changelog, and you want to select the value as 0. So that's how you would do it in Lutris. If it's in something like bottles, for example, I do have bottles here, we can launch it. And let's say we go into this random bottle that we have here, as it's named random, and we go to settings, and we go to environment variables. You would do display equals 0, and then go like that. Now that changed because I remember bottles used to be a bit different with that. You would do display and then you would just type a key, which would just be 0. But now you actually have to do display equals 0 to do it. I'm pretty sure that's the way you have to do it. So if that does work, that's really good. If it doesn't, please comment down below. I will do some testing of actual games to see if it works properly. And then that's it basically. You can then launch the game or application that you're trying to use in a Wayland native mode under Wine. So if you do test it out right now, Death Stranding does work properly with Wine 10 TKG that we're using. So we can launch it right now. I'm pretty sure, yeah, the FPS Mango HUD does work properly also. And there we go. We can click continue to get into the game. And let's say we want to turn on our SM30 Pro 8-bit Do controller through Bluetooth, because my motherboard has that. There you go. It's connected. You probably can't see the dot because I have a green screen, so that's just going to remove the green dot. But as you can see, here we are. And it is working properly. And this version of Wine does run basically almost the same as Wine GE. And yeah, like there's no real big issues that you can see. But as I'll show you soon, there is issues with Wine 10. And one first issue that we can see here is the icon is just a Wayland icon. There's no icon to distinguish between different games. I'll be mentioning that with the issues that I've had with Wine 10 under Wayland. Now, some of the issues that I have experienced with Wine 10, the first one is the cursor is some default cursor, and it doesn't set to the cursor that you're using in your desktop environment. Now, that's going to be fixed, so don't worry about it, but for right now, that's one issue that I've seen. Like, as we can see here, here's what the cursor looks like in the EA app launcher, which is very yucky, I would say. But the cursor, yeah, isn't synced up with your desktop environment. So if you wanted to use Wayland and you're noticing this problem, it's not just you, it's just a general problem right now with the Wayland driver. It's going to be changed at some point. And the other one, well, I've already written this one down, it's just appeared right in front of me, and that's notifications. At least on the EA app, you can see the notifications appear right in the middle. I'm pretty sure it appears right in the middle because I'm guessing it doesn't know where the corner of your monitor is. So it's appearing wherever your cursor is. That is actually the issue here. Or it's appearing in the middle. I haven't tested it fully, but that's the two problems that I'm thinking. It's either appearing in the middle or it's basing it off wherever your cursor is. So if you have a notification with the EA app and your cursor's like over here, like on some other monitor, the notification might appear over there. So that's an interesting issue that I'm seeing here. That's just one example. Cursor thing, the icon thing again, as you can see. Then the other one is the window. It creates a applet window, its own window for the applet when it should be down here in the system tray. That is probably a desktop environment issue, if I had to guess. So it's something like KD Plasma has to implement properly so that it can pin into the system tray, or maybe there's something not implemented properly yet. And there is some other ones, like let's try and launch the Rockstar Games launcher. So we're launching it. I'm pretty sure the Rockstar loading thing should appear. It creates its own window again for the little applet that should be in the system tray. And we experience nothing. We experience nothing. It's the window isn't going to appear. Okay, I'm just going to retry this again because the Rockstar Games launcher didn't want to launch properly. It comes up with a network error, and then I have to launch it in offline mode so then the launcher can launch, even though we're going to experience another issue anyways. But it should launch here, and it should bring up just a black window, basically, of the launcher, is what should happen here. But for some reason, Rockstar's like having issues with the Wayland driver enabled. Use it in XWAYLAND mode, and it works perfectly fine. But yeah, as we can see here, here's the network error. We can retry again, see what happens. It's probably not gonna change. Maybe it will work properly. I don't really know. Okay, well, if I can actually do this correctly, I'll show up a screenshot of what actually happens, but it's just a black window. You can't use the application, it's just black. And that happens in other applications also. And this can happen in other launchers like the Epic Games Store, for example. If we tried loading it up with the Wayland driver enabled, as you can see, it's not working. And this issue has got to do with how the Wayland driver loads with Chromium slash CEF launchers. So any type of game launcher that's using CEF slash Chromium can't be loaded properly or displayed properly yet. And the Wine developers or Codeweavers developers, they know about this issue. And so they are going to solve it at some point. But for right now, it's not doing. And we can just see the problem of these Wayland icons. There's just so many Wayland icons, they're everywhere, man. And the same issue happens with Ubisoft Connect, I'm pretty sure also, if I remember correctly. So as you can see, the Ubisoft Connect app launcher is loading, and then we just reach another black screen because it's probably using Chromium slash CEF. So again, we can't use that one. And then the other issue is if we launch the EA application again, when it comes to maximizing applications, they have a lovely white border around it. It's like another issue. As you can see, there's like these little white borders. I don't know if that's got something to do with EA or something else, but yeah, as you can see, there is a white border on the side. And I can cause a crash with the EA application. I did this today or yesterday when I was testing it. If you just like spam, like minimize all over the application, it will just freeze. And you can't really do anything about it. You have to just stop the process. So that's another issue I've experienced. And then the other one is some games don't even launch with Wayland enabled on Wine 10, like God of War Ragnarok. So if you try launching this, as you can see, it's just a black screen. For right now, the Wayland driver uses a older version of the window border, whatever you call it, headers or whatever, of an older version of Windows. I'm pretty sure there's like a Windows XP theme that they're using here, and it doesn't match your desktop environments. That's another thing that is going to be fixed soon also. I've read it over on the merge requests. That is something that they're going to implement because on X11 version of Wine, it does work with the desktop environment that you're using. So if you're using KDE Plasma, it's going to match the Breeze theme. If you're using GNOME, it's going to match the GTK theme. Either it be GTK 3 or GTK 4 of some kind. So that, at some point, that will be implemented. Oh, so there we go. The Rockstar Games Launcher finally decided to launch. As you can see, it's a black box. So that also just simply doesn't work. Now, the next one is about comparing Wine Wayland versus XWAYLAND. How well does the Wine Wayland driver behave and perform when it comes to actually playing games? Even though not every game works properly with the Wine Wayland driver yet, you can play some games. So I did benchmark 2 games to see if there was any difference between the Wayland and XWAYLAND driver. And when we look at the FPS with Cyberpunk 2077 at high graphics and high crowd density, no upscaling and no ray tracing, you can see like the FPS is basically margin of error, I would say. It's not that big of a difference versus something like Death Stranding where it's like a little bit better, but even then that might be a one-off thing and might be actually the exact same. But with Cyberpunk, we can see it's basically margin of error. There's no real big difference. And when we look at the frame time also, there isn't really that much of a difference. They're almost like neck and neck, the exact same. But if we do look at Death Stranding, we can see a slight difference with the FPS. This might be margin of error also, where the XWAYLAND driver on Wine could get 211 on the 97 percentile. But if we look right here, yeah, Wayland is able to gain a little bit, and when it comes to the average, it's a little bit higher. And when we look at the frame timing, it's basically I would say the exact same. Also, there's a lot of going back and forth, a lot of different spikes that really, they're just the exact same, I would say. There's not that big of a difference when you actually look at performance. Now, where this might matter is on lower end hardware. I have a Ryzen 7600 and an RX 6700, and I have DDR5 32 gigabytes of memory. It's something where a lower end system actually might see a difference because it is running that it's not running a X11 server to get the game to be displayed on the Wayland desktop. It's just natively being displayed with the Wayland Wine driver. And maybe in the future, we might see actual more improvements with the Wayland driver also. Now, when it comes to the experience when playing these games under Wayland, it is a lot better, I would say, and it does fix some actual important problems that have happened across Reddit and YouTube comments that I've seen on my channel over and over and over. Like, one of the first ones is about Death Stranding's frame timing is a lot more smoother when you're recording. So I was using GPU screen recorder, so then it doesn't use my CPU, it just tries to use mostly all of my GPU when encoding. And when I was encoding, on the XWAYLAND, the frame timing was looking a lot more weird, like weird spikiness to it, while on Wayland, it was perfectly smooth, like butter. And I played Death Stranding for around 5 hours, and I didn't really experience any major problems when it came to how the game felt, how it felt when like moving around in the game. No real major problems, I would say. But it also did fix things like the cursor. When you run a Death Stranding under XWAYLAND, the cursor doesn't disappear when you're playing on a controller. So if I'm playing on like my SN30 8-bit Do Pro controller, the cursor just stays up on the monitor, it doesn't disappear. But on Wayland, it does disappear properly, and it does return when you go to touch the mouse, and it also does use the right cursor theme for that game. So that's also a really good thing to see. Now, one of the biggest things that got fixed when running Wayland Wine on Death Stranding was about VRR flicker. I noticed when playing Death Stranding and cutscenes that were capped to 60 FPS, my monitor was showing heavy flickering. And I know this is a problem when it comes to more higher end monitors that have OLED technology, or some of the other technologies that are used on displays. I have an IPS monitor and it doesn't flicker that much, but it does flicker in some games like Death Stranding and cutscenes at 60 FPS. You can clearly see it, and I'll show up footage of what it looks like, and I did it in slow motion, and on the left you'll see X11 and it's like pulsating in slow motion. That's how you can see the VRR. But if you look on the Wayland side, there's no problems. The VRR seems to be working perfectly fine. There's no flickering, and it's just a way better experience because on Death Stranding, the flickering is really bad for some reason. And so when you're running it under XWAYLAND, it's really hard to focus on the cutscene, while on Wayland, it's like just perfect basically. There's no major issues that I'm seeing with my AMD hardware on Death Stranding now. With VRR, it works really well. Now, when it comes to the comparison of like memory usage with playing different games on the Wayland driver and the XWAYLAND Wine driver, there isn't that much of a difference, I would say. Sometimes the memory will be a little bit lower. I'll also show up gameplay of that. You'll see up close that there isn't that much of a difference when you really look at it. Again, this might be where a lower end PC will benefit from this versus something like me, who does have a more between mid-end and high-end PC system. I just won't experience those issues necessarily, but if I was on a lower-end hardware, I might experience those issues where an extra 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes might really benefit me on a laptop that only has like 8 gigabytes of RAM or maybe 16 gigabytes of RAM even. Now, one issue that I did also see with Death Stranding is when I was playing for around 5 to 6 hours, my cursor was able to escape the full screen window of that game. I don't know how I triggered it, but I was able to escape the cursor. And after I switched from windowed to full screen again, it fixed itself. So I don't know what I did to cause it, but it does indeed happen. So I would say with the gaming side of things, it does fix a couple of issues with playing games on Wayland, and I'm really excited to try out things like Proton 10, for example, so then I can enable Wayland on that and test more games, because I'll probably do a follow-up video of actual like more games showing different performance stats and stuff like that, so I can give everyone who's watching more of a understanding of how much better really is the Wayland Wine driver. But overall, I have enjoyed using this driver on something like Death Stranding and Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. So, like I said, is any of this actually getting fixed? Well, the first one is the Wayland icons, and it's the most popular one, which is the XDG top level icon. Now, from my knowledge, this is what is used to actually solve this problem so that it can show the correct icon of whatever game or application you're using. If I'm wrong, please comment down below to specify exactly what needs to be fixed. But from my knowledge, reading about this protocol is that, yeah, it does fix these shortcut problems. And as I said before, with the window title bars at the top of here, this is the example that was shown where it was like X11. You can see it's using the right GNOME title bar, but on here it's using some like Windows XP title bar, so it's not matching the theme with the desktop environment you're using. And then someone was like saying how XDG decoration protocol could be used to fix this. So I'm guessing at some point, probably soon, there's going to be a merge request that's going to be open, and maybe it has already been opened. I just haven't found it, where the title bars will be solved and it'll just match the theme properly for you. And then as I'm talking about the decoration, as I said before, the CEF is being fixed at some point because it uses some cross-process rendering, Alexandros is saying. So this will be, at some point, the Wayland driver will support that, and then these black game launchers that are showing up when you launch them will no longer be black, and you'll be able to look at what you're clicking on. So the applications will work really well. And when it comes to what else are they working on, well, you can go look at their merge request of like what is opened. I'm pretty sure it's this one here. And there is a lot of things that are being worked on with the Wayland driver. A couple of them are like like I said, the shortcut implementation to fix these little Wayland icons, or to fix alt tabbing. For some reason, alt tabbing has a issue that's being fixed at some point. Clipboard support. I remember doing a YouTube community post about this, how it's being fixed, and it's like how it can't interact with certain things under Wayland. So that's going to be fixed. Some other things are like the smooth scrolling events. So right now, if you try to use Wayland, you can't use two-finger smooth scrolling. So this is going to solve that, and you'll be able to use two-finger scrolling. Like if you're on a laptop or something, or any other type of device that can do two-finger scrolling, you'll be able to do it. Now, the big question is, when is Proton/Valve going to rebase their Proton to Proton 10? Based on Wine 10. When is that going to happen? Well, if we do look at the GitHub Proton and we look at the releases of when they rebased from Proton 8 to 9 and from 7 to 8, we could see that if we scroll down here, the first version of Proton 9, if we look at the first release was in May 3rd, and they had a release candidate 2 in April 22nd. There was a beta 16 on March 23rd. A lot of releases happened throughout those months. Went through Feb. We go to the second page here. We can see Proton 8 here at January 23rd. That was the last release Proton 8 had. And then if we look at the first release for Proton 8, it was in April. So if we're looking at these months here, we might see Proton 10, a beta version of Proton 10, might happen this month. But it's possible that they could do a beta release and they do a bunch of betas where everyone can test it out and report bugs, and then do some release candidates, and then actually do a full release where a normal Steam Deck user or someone who doesn't want to use the release candidate or beta versions can actually use it, and you'll be able to enable Wayland over the top of your games, or even maybe Valve might enable it if it's ready by then, because they're going to test it for a couple months. It's going to go through those betas and release candidates, and by then they might update their Wine to a higher version that will have a working, rather stable Wayland driver. Now that's just copium from me, but it's definitely possible when it comes to game launcher support in games, because games already basically work perfectly fine with maximizing, full screening, changing resolutions. All those things work properly, just that other things like some game launchers are like black screening. So when those things get figured out, I wouldn't be surprised if Valve enables the Wayland driver under their Proton runner rather quickly, and then you'll be able to just use WAYLAND. So my conclusion with the WAYLAND driver is that it's going quite well. It's taken like 2.5 years, I think, since they started working on it to bring it to a stable, kind of stable driver where you can actually use it. And just force an environment variable. And it makes sense that it's not enabled yet because it does have issues that need to be solved so that Valve can at some point probably use it. And that will just make it a whole lot easier when it comes to implement certain things and getting closer to a full Wayland native experience. And there still is, I think, many things left, not just Wine that need to enable Wayland. There's also some applications that still run under XWAYLAND for some reason. Some Chromium applications that run through CEF still use XWAYLAND. Some use Wayland by default, but have other issues like OBS with their browser docs. It doesn't work under Wayland, so it's disabled. So you have to use XWAYLAND if you want those browser docs, or you have to use X11. And then there's like Steam. That's also running under XWAYLAnd, and there's no real release date of when that will be enabled by default. Probably when CEF/Chromium is able to support the necessary things for Wayland. And I know there's a developer working on it now who's from, I think it was Toyota, I'm pretty sure, who's working on it because they use it in their cars, on their the screens that they use in the cars. They use a Wayland compositor with CEF. So that's really cool to see that, you know, a car company is using it. That's freaking awesome. So that is the conclusion with this video. I would like to know your thoughts about the Wayland driver. What issues have you experienced, and what things are you excited about when it comes to using the Wayland driver? Is there anything that you're seeing on like merge requests that you're like, oh, I can't wait to see this be merge request? I would really like to know. And thank you to my supporters. I'll show a screenshot of you now. They give me money every single month. I really do appreciate it. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel and like the video. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.